Hello, YouTube. I have been studying whatever is available in the Russian sources about the legendary land of Beharmia, or Atlantis of the Northern Europe, a land by the Baltic Sea. One of my sources is the fascinating book Campfires on the Shores in English of Russian archaeologist and researcher Nikitin. I have kept that book for over 3 decades. He is the one, by the way, who studied the mysterious mazes in the Russian north and their resemblance to the modern antennas, as well as their connection to the Minoan kingdom. I doubt if there will ever be an English translation, edition of his books, and they're fascinating books, and not only about the subjects, about the, for example, the Knights of Templiers and much more secret societies and very interesting historical research. But I will continue referencing Nikitin in my research. Beharmia we will discuss in another video. But trust me, Nikitin, who had passed away in 2005, made a discovery as to the identity of the people who lived there and their civilization. Some of you actually will learn about your ancestors and about an ancient European people who were considered to be vanished, at least in that part of Europe. But today I want to share an episode from Nikitin's research that I find very interesting. And later I'll tell you about another possibly related event that I learned of decades ago, but actually cannot find anything else about it. Here's what Andrei Nikitin wrote in his book. It was then, after digging into my memory, that I remembered the riddle of Beharmia, my sorrows, and at the same time about the sagas. At one time, I was struck by the story of the journey of the Danish king Gorm to Beharmia, and from there to the realm of the dead. What was the real basis of the fiction, and to what extent was everything invented there? For readers of the first decades of our century, everything that was reported in this saga related to reality in the same way as the fairy tales of the 1001 Nights. But more than half a century has passed since then. We have become not just more aware. During this time, we have learned to guess a lot and to foresee a lot. Such was life in our 20th century, which gave rise to scientific and unscientific fiction, which prepared us and our consciousness for what can expect our children beyond the threshold of the third millennium. Once in the realm of the dead, Gorm discovered a certain iron palace on his way. From a distance, it seemed to be shrouded in a sort of smoky cloud, preventing one from approaching it. When the king and his companions finally got inside this strange room, with the help of high ladders, they found lifeless images of monsters sitting on iron benches, which was separated from each other by lead bulkheads. There were terrifying watchmen near the entrances. Then the travelers found the dead people, the description of which was quite strange. An old man with a pierced chest was sitting on the hills under a crack in the rock, and next to him were 3 women with broken backs with some ugly goiter on the body. There were a lot of treasures in these rooms, but as soon as Gorm's companions stretched out their hands for them, they were struck by invisible guards, and suddenly those lifeless images of monsters came to life. Only Gorm, with a small number of people, was saved. This was my short tribute to Andrei Nikitin and his research. Well, Andrei Leonidovich Nikitin was a historian, archaeologist, literary critic, and publicist. He conducted archaeological research in the Volga-Oka interfluvy on the shores of the White Sea. He participated in the excavations of Novgorod, Pskov in the Crimea, in the south of Ukraine, in Moldova, and in Transcaucasia. Full member of the Geographical Society of the USSR, author of works on archaeology, history, paleogeography, historical ecology of Eastern Europe. The work of Andrei Nikitin, a writer, a member of the USSR Union of Writers, is inextricably linked with the Russian North. He published books since 1962, and from 1975 to 1985, as a scientific secretary, this was the title, Nikitin directed the work of the Permanent Commission on the problems of the word about Igor's regiment. And this was in the USSR Union of Writers. He initiated the celebration of the 800th anniversary of the word about Igor's regiment at UNESCO. It was a very interesting work of Russian history that goes back hundreds of years. The description of the facility that King Gorm raided or visited reminds me of the Yakutia cauldrons a little. And you can see my videos about those cauldrons. I'm impressed with the invisible guards reference. You are free to draw parallels with modern technology. And I think this is what Nikitin was alluding to. And he could not know the extent of our modern high-tech iPhones and everything else at the time when he wrote his book. And also the lifeless images of monsters. Well, what do you expect if you show a computer screen to the 10th century Viking? Now, about King Gorm. Gorm the Old, in Danish Gorm den Gamle, in Old Norse Gamli, in Latin Gormus Senex, was also called Gorm the Languid, and he was the ruler of Denmark, reigning from about 936 to his death around 958, a few years later. He ruled from Jelling and made the oldest of the Jelling stones in honor of his wife Thyra. Gorm was born before 900 and died perhaps around 958 or possibly 963 or 964 AD. I'll try to find out more information about this Viking raid or Viking journey. Call it whatever you want. If it's possible, where did the Iron Palace come from? Was it a crashed advanced craft, a time-traveling aircraft, a spaceship of an extraterrestrial race visiting our planet? The description is uncanny of what King Gorm saw inside the Iron Palace and around it. Remember the description? But what was it? I do not know yet. Now, let me tell you about one interesting project. The Kaduma project. There was an article about 26 years ago in Russia that a joint Russian-Finnish expedition of scientists from the Jyväskylä University in Finland and Peter the Great Institute of Anthropology and Ethnography in Russia, that the joint project was completed in the autumn of 1996. The Finnish government claimed that article had invested over 110 million Finnish marks into the Kaduma project. So it's no small change. The project was actually initiated before the disintegration of the USSR. However, I could not find any further confirmation of the existence of this project and those who had participated in it. In 1986, young Leningrad scientists Vladimir Maidanov and Alexei Knyazev discovered a weak radioactive trace. They established that its path lay through Scandinavia from Helsinki towards the city of Kronstadt and abruptly ended in the Volosova area in the USSR. In 1990, scientists from Finland and Sweden reported that the signal, weakest on Soviet territory, becomes more powerful in the area of the Scandinavian mountains. Both Soviet scientists came to the conclusion that this was a trajectory of a crashed alien ship. What happened to its crew, and where are the fragments of the ship? To answer their questions, Swedish and other foreign scientists joined the research. A Swedish satellite performed measurements and studied the trace in the Arctic Ocean. The conclusion was reached that most likely a disaster took place before the first ice age in Europe, and maybe even caused the first ice age, that disaster. The disaster took place in the outer space when a huge alien spaceship reached its optimal trajectory and tried to land in the area of the Scandinavia Ridge. The ship probably touched on the ridge, and only a part of the emergency capsule reached Volosovo. The information comes from the article published in Anomalia newspaper in its issue number 2 in 1997. Knyazev and Maidanov did not have necessary equipment and funds to conduct a comprehensive research, but they concluded that archaeology provides proof of their hypothesis. They attended a painting exhibition of Nikolai Rurich painting. More about this person in my other videos. You should see them and his travels in Asia, Tibet, and so forth. Under the banner of the of the United States, it was a KGB, early KGB sponsored exhibition. It was very complicated, and events that took place are most interesting, including the observation of an alleged UFO in 1926 over Asia. Anyway, the scientists who visited the painting exhibition of Nikolai Rurich paid attention to a drawing of an ancient burial ground. Locals consider it to be sacred. Rurich's archaeological expedition conducted excavations in the area of his Volosova manor called Izvar. Knyazev and Maidanov were able to research the documents of Rurich's expedition and obtain exact description and measurements of the burial ground. According to them, the measurements were exactly as those of the emergency capsule of the American Apollo spaceships. Other interesting details about the burial ground, including a sitting astronaut or cosmonaut position and the strange artifacts found there. Their position resembled that of the spaceship controls. Russian scientists believed that those who survived the crash, or early humans, actually buried the dead aliens and then tried to recover fragments of the ship. The Ice Age forced humans to retreat to the Altai Mountains and the Pamir areas. A gigantic glacier dragged fragments of the crashed ship to the Arctic Ocean and partially covered them. It is possible that Nikolai Rurich guessed the same. Many doctors and scientists observed that the Volosova indigenous people have different anthropological features than residents of Estonia and Finland, as well as Russia. Ancient Russian manuscripts and directives of Emperor Peter I, Peter the Great, describe the magic of the Chud sorcerers, and you should see my videos, of course, about the Chud. There is quite a lot. You can go through them. The Russian Orthodox Church and the Muscovite princes put down uprisings of the local adherents of ancient magic. And yet there are still legends and ancient knowledge in the Baltic, as well as burial grounds shaped as capsules. So, I'm asking you, is there a connection to the facility, or the Iron Palace facility raided by King Gorm? Well, the territories are in the vicinity, so to say, more or less. The timing is off by thousands of years, but what if there were more crashes, if any? I have tried to find out more about this Kaduma project, like I said, to confirm the veracity of the article, but I have not been able to. So the search continues. Somebody looks to me, doesn't want this information to be out there. So if there is anything in the open sources in a number of languages that I can search, I'll find out. I want to thank you for your attention to my work. If you can support my research, please find the links in the description of this video. And if you go to my playlist and the videos in my channel, you'll have a chance to learn quite a lot about the mysterious Chud people and other paranormal phenomena of the Russian North. Thank you.